everybody. Welcome back to Listen in Depth. Today at Prime Minister's Questions, Keir Starmer was under serious pressure and this was an absolute mess from start to finish. In our last video, we showed you the huge clash between the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, and once again, he fails to answer even the most basic questions. Not one clear answer, not one straight response. But this time, he slips up, and it's a big one. Because in this exchange, Starmer reveals something that's raised serious concerns about how criticism around religion, particularly Islam, is being handled in the UK. The implications of what he says here are massive, and you'll see exactly why in a moment, so let's get into it. But before we do, make sure to hit like and subscribe to Listen in Depth for more. Now listen carefully to what's being suggested here. The government has been trying to frame these new definitions and policies around Islamophobia as guidance, something advisory, something that won't directly impact people in a serious way. That's the line they've been pushing. But what you just heard tells a slightly different story. Because the implication here is clear, certain types of criticism or even strong opinions could carry real consequences. And that's where people start asking questions. Why should someone face professional consequences simply for expressing a viewpoint? Where does that line get drawn? And who decides what crosses it? These aren't small questions. They go right to the heart of free expression and public debate in the UK. And this is exactly why this moment matters.
Mr. Speaker, so her position is that the Shadow Justice Secretary is defending British values when he says Muslims praying together in Trafalgar Square are not welcome. Mr. Speaker, even Tommy Robinson, I can hardly believe I'm saying this, has said today that if the Shadow Justice Secretary had made these hateful comments 2 years ago, the Conservative Party would have kicked him out. Now, Tommy Robinson isn't some sort of moral signpost. He was pointing out how much their party has changed. They're more inclined to his views, and he's right about that. The fact that he's sitting on her front bench shows she's too weak and has got absolutely no judgment.
The Prime Minister wants to talk about my leadership. I'm shocked because his former deputy has just fired the starting gun on the race to replace him. And I'll tell him one thing. She and I both agree that this weak man should be replaced by a strong woman.
You get the bigger pattern. Throughout this entire session, Starmer avoids the central issues being raised. Questions about Mandleson, about Iran, serious topics. And instead of addressing them directly, the conversation gets pulled in completely different directions. Tommy Robinson gets mentioned, Islam gets brought into it, side arguments take over. And before you know it, the original question, the one that actually matters, is gone. Even the Speaker steps back and says he's not responsible for the answers. But that's exactly the problem. If the Prime Minister isn't giving clear answers in Parliament, then what's the point of the exchange in the first place? It turns into noise, and that's what frustrates people watching.
Andrew Snowden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Every week the Prime Minister comes here and reads out this pre-scripted nonsense that bears no resemblance to the questions he's actually asked. The Leader of the Opposition asked him about Peter Mandleson and he answered about the war in Iran. The Leader of the Opposition asked him about Mandleson again and he answered with an attack on the Shadow Justice Secretary. He was asked about Mandleson again and talked about protests in London. What is he scared of? What is he hiding? For a man who has spent years presenting himself as a forensic investigator, he has certainly had a blind spot to the details for this convicted paedophile with a friend in high Labour places. So I shall ask him again, when he found out that Lord Mandleson had an ongoing relationship with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, did he speak to him personally before appointing him ambassador to the United States?
Mr. Speaker, we've set out the process. It is being put before the House. But I know why they don't want to. They don't want to talk about the war because they supported going into the war without thinking through the consequences. That is a huge error of judgment. I realise they don't want to talk about it ever again. I'm not surprised. Nor do they want to talk about the Shadow Justice Secretary, saying that Muslims are not welcome to prayer in Trafalgar Square. She should remove him from their front bench, or I suspect he'll be up there next on that trail.
And even when he's directly called out for not answering questions, he still doesn't answer them. That right there tells you everything you need to know about what just happened. Because this isn't just about one exchange or one awkward moment in Parliament. This is about a pattern, a very clear pattern, where a direct question is asked and instead of getting a direct answer, the entire conversation gets redirected somewhere else. You saw it happen again and again. A question comes in, simple, specific, and on the record. And instead of addressing it head on, it gets wrapped in process, diverted into a different topic, or turned back on to the person asking it. And the more it happens, the more obvious it becomes that the original issue is being avoided rather than confronted. And that's where the real concern starts. Because in a setting like Prime Minister's questions, where accountability is supposed to be at its highest, clarity isn't optional, it's expected. This is where decisions are challenged, where leadership is tested, and where the public gets to see how those in power respond under pressure. So when that clarity is missing, people notice. Not because of party lines, not because of political loyalty, but because, at a basic level, people expect straight answers to straight questions. And when those answers don't come, it creates a gap between what's being asked and what's being said. And in that gap, trust starts to erode. Now, what makes this moment even more significant is how quickly the conversation shifts into completely different territory. Instead of staying focused on the original issue, the debate expands, new topics are introduced, emotions get heightened, and the energy in the room changes. Suddenly, it's no longer about one question. It becomes something bigger, louder, and far more chaotic. And that shift isn't random. It changes what people focus on. It changes what clips get shared. And it changes what the conversation becomes after the moment has passed. Because instead of people asking, was the question answered? They start reacting to everything else that was said around it. And that's how the core issue gets lost. Now step back for a second and look at the bigger picture. This isn't just about one debate or one exchange. It's about how leadership operates under scrutiny. It's about how difficult questions are handled when the pressure is on. And it's about whether accountability is being met or managed. Because there's a difference. Handling a question means addressing it directly, even if the answer is uncomfortable. Managing a question means controlling the conversation around it, shaping it, redirecting it, and, if necessary, avoiding it altogether. And what you saw here clearly leans toward the second. That's why moments like this matter. Because they don't just reveal what was said, they reveal how things are handled when it matters most. So the real question isn't just about the topic itself, it's about the response. Was this a genuine attempt to engage with the issue or a calculated move to steer the conversation away from it? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I read them and I want to know where you stand on this. And if you want more clear, focused breakdowns like this, without the noise, without the spin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to Britain in Depth. Because here, we don't chase headlines, we break them down.